Return of the King closes with a song called Into the West, and that song has a very interesting background in terms of how it was inspired. The story is about a young New Zealand filmmaker, actually, a young man called Cameron Duncan, who was 16 years old when we met him. And we actually met Cameron in a way that was not related to Return of the King at all. Fran and I wanted to support a organ donation campaign here in New Zealand, like a sort of public awareness commercial that we wanted to help get made, because it's a cause that we feel very strongly about. And we'd become aware of this very talented young man who was making movies, who was winning competitions. Cameron had been making films ever since he was a kid. I mean, in that regard, he was very much like me. And one commercial in particular was a road safety commercial that he'd won prizes for when he was much younger, when he was 12 or 13. So we were very impressed with Cameron's work, and we thought that it would be great to invite Cameron to actually make this organ donation commercial, because it was a chance to as well as supporting the campaign, to actually give support to a young filmmaker as well. So we had this plan of inviting Cameron to make this commercial, of getting some volunteers from the Return of the King crew to help film it during the weekends, and we were going to use our equipment and cameras and kind of do this thing. So we contacted Cameron about this, and we found out something that Cameron had just experienced that we had no idea about, and he had contracted cancer.
Well, in October 2001, Cameron was a softball pitcher, and we were about to go into the softball season. We were just warming up, and that's when Cameron noticed a lump on his knee and an ache in his left knee. So we started going to the doctors to see what was wrong with him, and by February 2002, they diagnosed it as osteosarcoma.
Well, that was a huge thing for me. I was told that I would never play softball again, which is, really, when you spend your whole life devoted to something and just have it end in a day, it is really shocking. So I, against my doctor's orders to not play the next day, on the Saturday, I played my last game, which is a very emotional game.
You told your teammates?
Yep, I told them there. I asked them if they could play their guts out for me, because this could possibly be my last game, or, the last time they'd see me.
And we had no idea about this, and what he said to us was that he was clear. He'd gone through a very horrible chemotherapy regime, and it was looking good for him, that he was obviously really excited about doing the organ donation campaign. And he just happened to mention that he'd finished a film, a short film that he'd made about his experiences as a cancer patient.
I thought, why not write about it? It's a good story. I have a good story on my hands, and it'd be good to be, to speak for people who have no voice,
He was aiming at things like the incarceration and the freedom that he'd lost, and he wanted to inspire particularly his closest friends, because they were softballers and they didn't appreciate the fact that they could run and walk, and he wanted to tell them, be grateful for what you've got, because by this time he was in a wheelchair.
Freedom is taken so much for granted. And you don't appreciate the small things that you have. My number is DFK 6498. A number which was printed on all my records since the beginning of my life here on this very earth. Sentenced to imprisonment. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't perform a crime. Hell, I've never even drunk a drop of liquor, nor smoked a cigarette, never looked twice at drugs. I'm what you call a 100% straight shooter, but I'm in here. This hellhole, my personal four-wall prison. All because of this. This thing, this demon I must care for and nurture, for this is why I'm here. It's amazing how something so simple can destroy so much. The meals here are horrible. Everybody says it. It's amazing how much a human being will endure just to survive. It's always the same here. Always. I have a tendency to feel sorry for myself, but I'm constantly reminded of the others who join me here. These people. They're only young. They too have committed no crime. For everyone here is innocent. I go through the day in, day out routine. The head guard is so punctual. He comes in on every morning, binds me to my room. It's a punishment I must face as part of my sentence. It's like kryptonite to Superman. I hate it. The only thing I have to go by is that it's all for my own good. I suppose it's my fault I'm in here. For years I've spent toying with fate. Maybe fate has chosen to toy with me, in which case fate has served its purpose well. I was so free. The world, my playground, the soil, my arena. Fate has pushed me so far as to see my life teeter on the edge of a building. But I would never jump. I live for my peers, for the people I love. For when I die, it is not me who will be affected. It's the ones I leave behind. This would probably be the only goddamn prison that leaves their doors unlocked. It's a torture that each inmate must face. But I dare not leave. Not even for freedom. The worst part about being in here is how time ticks by incessantly, so slowly. Being caged doesn't mean that time stops, for we all live our lives by the clock, and so too do I live mine, but much slower. Seconds feel like minutes, minutes like hours, hours like days, days like months. It's like chasing a rainbow to no resolve. You just chase it. I found the best way to pass the time is to sleep, because when I sleep I dream, and when I dream I can rise above the walls of the prison. I dream of waking up among lilies and getting that feeling in my body that only comes when you're by yourself. I dream of the simple things that possess so much beauty for even the most unfortunate man. I dream of listening to the whisper of my breathing, paying attention to the function more so than at any routine moment. I dream of seeing things so beautiful that it hurts to watch them. Freedom is taken so much for granted when you don't appreciate the small things that you have. You know, the hardest part about dreaming is having to wake up. Because when I awake, I'm still here.
So as you can see, I mean, the film, you know, made by a 16-year-old is remarkable for just the wisdom and the incredible insight that Cameron showed.
Did you want to die? Was it so bad, the chemo?
Sometimes, yeah. So it's horrible. It's the worst stuff in the world. Yeah, again, sort of getting sick to get better and recovering each week to get sick again is really hard.
Hit again.
You know, you want to jump off a bridge. I mean, I'd never do it, but you know, it's that bad. It's a really hard treatment, and there's so many young kids going through it. That's the only thing that keeps you going, is that these young guys are there.
So we started to talk to Cameron about the organ donation campaign, and then very much at the same time he was re-diagnosed with cancer. The cancer had come back. He was clear, but only clear for a couple of months, basically.
By March 5th, we found out that he had been diagnosed terminal and that the oncologists here believed that he didn't have any chance of survival. And they gave him probably a couple of months to live.
There was very little we could do, but what we did do was to invite him down to the set of Return of the King. We were shooting our pickups.
So he had the opportunity to come down and meet Peter and go around Weta workshops and have a look at the set, and it was just cool. He just raved about it for about the next 3 weeks.
He actually brought down a tape of his home movies to show me stuff that he'd done when he was much younger, and it was like people running around with guns and war scenes and explosions, and there was a lot about Cameron that reminded me of myself when I was that age.
The neighbours didn't complain too much about Cameron. They did initially. At first, they thought it was cars backfiring. When they got used to it happening on a regular weekend basis, they knew it was this kid in the park exploding things.
I particularly thought his explosions were fantastic, because when I was a kid I tried to do explosions as well, and I used to use old fireworks, but Cameron had figured out a technique which I wish I knew when I was young, which was mixing up household chemicals, which will not be discussed here on this video. But mixing up household chemicals into a Coca-Cola bottle and kind of screwing it up and letting it explode, and I was very impressed by that.
And he did actually comment on one part where he'd given Pete a clip of his home movies, and it was the laser swords. And he said Pete took it into Weta Digital and showed them. He came back and he goes, Pete was showing them, saying, look, Cameron made these, a 16-year-old did this on his home computer. So it made him feel that he was actually hitting the mark.
I got to hang around with Peter Jackson and sort of sit behind him and watch over his shoulder. Viggo Mortensen, I went up and sort of met him and got introduced to him. I said, they said, this is Viggo. And yeah, you don't have to tell me. And she said, this is Cameron. And he goes, yeah, I've heard a lot about you, man, because he's quite soft-spoken, and I was saying, and he goes, you made a little film, and yeah. I go, yeah, I have to get you a coffee, and he goes, don't worry, I've been ripping off coffees all over the place. I got one right here. I'm taking it back to my trailer right now, And so he got to watch it, and Ian McKellen saw it, and he said, don't worry about it. Forget about directing. What about acting? He's quite. That was cool. It was really awesome to know that they'd seen it and stuff and liked it, and got quite famous on the set there.
We had a lot of fun with Cameron on set. He really got to bond with the actors, and we were obviously, hoping that we could help him in whatever way to fight this disease. We were talking to him about the organ donation commercial, which he still wanted to do, and as the months wore on, obviously he was fighting a very tough battle, and it got to a point where I think Cameron in his heart probably felt that he had limited time. He was very positive, he was very optimistic, he was a real battler, but he suddenly became invested with this huge desire to want to make movies very quickly. And so he wanted to make the organ donation commercial, which he did.
And he felt that was an obligation. He absolutely wanted to honour Peter for recommending him to make it, and he was determined he was going to make it. So he regarded organ donors as heroes and life-saving heroes, because he thought one day he's going to need a lung, and he thought, he wanted to acknowledge them as heroes, and that's why he made it the way he did.
So just walk through it. So go Kyle, and open up your thing and pull out your tank. Bob, go Bob.
This is a pretty major production, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's pretty major. It'd be the most majorist that I've ever done.
All the crossing and the timing and the... No, that looked cool.
Is it good to be in this, doing this, shooting
Yeah,
again?
it is. Yeah. Never thought I'd be doing this again. So it's quite cool to be back.
And more remarkable than that is a film called Strike Zone, which he did. Now, Strike Zone was made when Cameron was undergoing what was essentially his last round of chemotherapy, and he was incredibly ill. He wrote the film during one bout of chemotherapy, very sick, in bed, when the chemo had a break for 2 or 3 weeks between the bouts of chemo, he gathered enough strength to get out of hospital bed and to actually undertake this shoot, which had night shoots. It was raining, it had war scenes, it was this technically difficult little film to make. And I remember talking to him just after he'd finished the movie, and I was in England doing the music at this stage for Return of the King. We were over in England, he was down here in New Zealand, and I asked him what it was like, how it went, and you know, he was sort of talking about the normal things that any filmmakers experience, about how difficult the night shoots were, how difficult the rain was, and the extras, and having to stage this softball match, actually, which is in the film. And then he sort of says, oh, and it was a real bummer because I right in the middle of it, I popped a hole in my lung, which was a result of this cancer had eroded his lungs away to such an extent that he popped a hole in his lung. And the way that he just threw it out there like it was just one of those other annoying things that happened during the shoot, I mean, was amazing.
On day 3 of that shoot, or day 2 of that shoot, we actually shot something like, I think Cameron was up for 22 hours. And the actual shoot started around 3:30 in the afternoon and wrapped at 6:30 the following morning. And you know, that was amazing for a boy who was undergoing some pretty heavy chemotherapy treatment and carrying big tumours in his lungs, and had also popped a hole in his lung.
And what's actually incredible is not just the fact that he made this movie under these conditions, but it's the actual quality of the film itself. And we should have a look at Strike Zone now and just be aware, I've told you of the way in which it was made, but, you know, forget that, just have a look at it as a piece of filmmaking.
Come on! Ring la paquilla! Wawa taquilla caquillo! Oki! Aikio de oki! Akamate mateko! Akamate mateko! Atenete tamata! La itiki! Paka pitite! Aupa! Aupa! Well, that kickstarts this game. Let's play ball!
If you looked at us now, we look good. To think only 2 months ago we were the worst team in the league. Who would have known that love of the game could consume your life? Softball is a sport like cancer. It grows on you.
Well, it's the best we could have hoped for. Your scans are clear. You're healthy. We'll see you again in 6 months. Hey, don't worry. Be happy. It's great news.
Cameron, the doctor's ready to see you now.
You play out the scenario in your head, hoping for a positive outcome, but that's often not the case.
Cameron, it's not good news, I'm afraid.
Reality sucks.
You have around 25 metastatic lesions on both sides of your lungs. Chemotherapy would not be effective at this time. And from a curative point of view, well, we really are out of options. I'm sorry.
And that was it. I tell you what, that was the saddest drive home of my life. I haven't always been the best guy, but I suppose people would become critical of their life if they only had 2 months to correct it. So I made myself a team, and I was to be the coach. I knocked on every door with a ball outside in the yard, every youthful prospect in the neighborhood, and I held the postcard close to the man who would make it all worthwhile, the legendary Kevin Herlihy, the man who could throw the fastest projectile on the planet, the 220-kilometer fastball that would win me my championship.
I'm sorry, I must have the wrong house. I was looking for Kevin Herlihy.
No, you're at the right house.
You don't look like the guy in the picture.
We became good friends, and I signed him up as pitching coach. And for the record, it was only 150 kilometers. It got faster as the myth grew. And so, my team was complete. I trained these pansies into the ground. I taught them about pain, how much I was in and how much they weren't. I pushed their flabby bodies to near heart attacks, and I always said,
When I say shit, you say how much. I am not your friend. And that little voice in the back of your head,
pushing you to work harder. Even when I'm not there. When I think of a team, I think of the camaraderie of a battalion in the war.
You two, find the hole! Go! Hey, come with me! Keep down!
My men are soldiers, and the diamond is our battlefield. Softball is the game of life to me. There's something about the gracefulness of it all that makes it the greatest game on earth.
Hey, Cam. We're down 2-1. We really need you to get out there and talk to the guys now, eh?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'll talk to them. Now that I've told you our story and how we came to be, we're losing. And I need a miracle. 2-1 with a runner on first and no outs? Jesus. That is not in our favor. 15 minutes is all we got left, guys. 15 minutes. 2 innings and 6 outs. 15 minutes, I don't give a damn what you do with your lives after this. I don't care if you never play this game again. But this championship's your gift to me, if nothing else than this. I want you to pitch the hardest your arm will let you throw the ball. I want you guys to run the fastest and the hardest that your legs will carry you, because if there is one thing that I have learned from all I've been through, is that you only regret the things that you didn't do. No regrets, guys. Not tonight. Defense on 3, eh?
1, 2, 3, defense!
I talked a lot of crap, but with a few good words, you can change a team.
Come on, you. Here we go.
It's unbelievable, folks. I've never, ever seen anything like that in my entire career. What a catch! Holy mackerel. I don't know what Coach Cam said to those boys, but this is a whole new team. They are playing outstanding ball. Good boy. This game's all tied at 2 apiece.
I told Lee Cameron to run into them if they get in your way. I should have known it was a disaster waiting to happen.
Not to me! Oi! You're out of here! You're out! Out! Oi! Out! Come on, Tina! Come on, Tina!
This baby is going down to the wire.
Sorry, Pay. Kurt was always the show pony. DC got ran out, and Max was caught at left field. That left us with 3-2 in our favor. We got 2 quick outs, but the pressure was on when a runner got to second. And there we were. 1 out for the game. 1 out, and it was all over. It was one of those plays that seemed to last for a lifetime.
Lee Cameron may have been called out for charging on the bases earlier, but he won the game that night. I'll never forget their faces as they charged home to hug Lee. I wish I could have been there, but I never made it out to congratulate them. You just know when death is coming, because you start remembering your life more than you actually live it. When your time is up, your time is up. And you just pray to God that you've done something worthwhile with your life. I prayed that the guys would never forget this night and what we had. This was our championship, and this was their gift to me. They chose me a spot on the hill, so I could guard the field as the seasons passed, time and time again. To bring a team of men together like that is something short of magic. I hope I'll be missed, and I want people to cry at my funeral. But the one thing that I don't want to be is I don't want to be forgotten. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that.
There's a part in Strike Zone where Cameron makes us all face the reality that he was facing. Cameron was very much a realist. In fact, one of his school teachers felt he was a young philosopher. He really looked deeply into what was going on in his life and this life-threatening disease that he had. He looked at it realistically and decided, right, I'm going to go the whole hog. So he had in his script that he would die on the field. Beautiful way to go for a person who wanted to be a New Zealand softball player. And certainly a way to get everyone's attention, because it was immensely sad, as we all knew, what he was up against, and hugely mature of him to face that. I'd seen the script and I thought, oh, Cameron, why do cancer victims always have to die? You know, why can't you make a movie about them winning? Because I was so positive and I just so didn't want to face this part. And he just made me look at it. In fact, Fran and I talked about it after Fran and Pete had seen Strike Zone, and Fran said too, he's using a medium to make us realise what we don't want to realise. We don't want to see.
And at that time, Fran was writing the song Into the West for the end of the film, except she wasn't very inspired and was kind of stuck and was sort of sitting for hours looking at a blank piece of paper trying to figure out what the lyrics of the song could be. And then Cameron sent over Strike Zone, which he had just finished. When Fran saw this film, she immediately felt inspired to write the words of the song.
When we were in England in August, we were thinking about writing the song. Cameron was very much with us. He was getting chemo at that time in New Zealand. But he was calling us and emailing us, and he was making a strike zone, which is a great testament to him and his abilities as a filmmaker and just who he is as a person. And it was during that time that it became more apparent to me that he wasn't probably going to beat this thing, even though that wasn't something that you let yourself think about. It felt like that he probably wasn't going to beat the cancer. And so it was odd, because the song is very much about, you know, Frodo's passing, but it personally, for me, was also about reconciling the conflicted feelings about Cameron and what he was facing. It's something, he was a special kid, that's all I can say. He really was. I know all kids are special, but he was extra special. And a lot of people felt it.
There's a line in Strike Zone where Cameron refers to the fact that, you know, what do you do when you have 2 months to live? And as it turned out, he had exactly 2 months to live.
The thing I thank Cameron very much for was, at a time of death when it hit so hard, he had already laid the foundations for his funeral by showing us how he wanted it done, and we reenacted it for him. And I really am grateful for that. I suppose one thing I should say is that we picked him a place on the hill so that he could watch the seasons pass. I think he says time after time. And that is where he is. He's on a hill, watching over the park.
He didn't want to be forgotten, and it's great that this DVD exists now, because he won't be. So we're very happy to have been able to present these films.
To